Thank you for the invite. So it's my pleasure to be here today. As Marlene had made mention to, the normal African Nova Scotian coordinator is out presently, so I've been given the opportunity to kind of fill in while in his absence. So it's been nice. It's exciting. And just as the rest of our team had got together, Jared and Joe and I, to kind of discuss some of the things that been happening within our region, there's lots of good things happening. So it's nice to kind of regroup and kind of bring that together, because sometimes you're so busy in the midst of it all, you don't actually realize the amount of work in which has actually been put forth. So once again, I'm Brandy Jarvis Nickerson. My role is Mi'kmaq Education Coordinator, but in the interim, I'm supporting or covering in the interim for the African Nova Scotian coordinator's position as well, along with Joe.
And so I'm Joe Bashara, and I'm the equity consultant for the Tri-County Center for Education. So Brandy Martin and I work together as an equity team, supporting each other's work, paying close attention to the intersectionality of the work, and making sure that that we're there for one another, so that we can be there collectively as a system for every kid in the system. By means of introduction, I'll leave it at that and turn it to Jared, and then we'll start giving some information.
Hi everyone, my name is Jared Purdy, Director of Programs and Student Services for Tri-County. Do a lot of work closely with Joe and Brandy, as well as Martin and the rest of the team here at Tri-County. Prior to this, very proud of the fact that I spent a number of years at Yarmouth Central School here in Yarmouth as a student teacher, a teacher, vice principal, and principal. And I do feel that really formed the base for who I am as a professional. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and excited to share a lot of the great work that's happening in Tri-County.
So what we were hoping to be able to accomplish today and to offer today was some insight on activities, that funding that comes from the EECD. What we know we have to use on the one hand, but on the other, what we're doing on the ground. What does it look like? How does it benefit Black learners in our system and their allies? So in terms of our region, we encompass Shelburne, Yarmouth, and Digby County, which is a full complement of 5,674 students that are enrolled. Using Power School data, which is only as good as it is today, we know that we have 374 students tri-county wide that identify as being of African descent. That number is about 6.6% of our total school enrollment. Now, I say the data is only as good as what we have today because we are conscious, very conscious, that some students, for reasons of choice or for reasons of protection, choose not to identify, but who are of African descent. And so the way that we outreach to all students is through our whole staff approach on the one hand, but the shining stars in our schools who have them are the student support workers. They're the cultural go-to in the school, linking the community, the families, and helping the student navigate pathways of success within the education system, and advocating when day-to-day barriers are identified and need to be addressed swiftly. So the funding sources that traditionally we've had from EECD that I'm aware of are the Racial Equity Fund, which up until presently was approximately $4,500 a year. We've also received funding for math and literacy support. That funding is used to employ reading mentors, primarily in elementary schools. We have currently a reading mentor in the Weymouth area. We have one at Yarmouth Elementary School, and we have one at Hillcrest Academy, which are the three schools per county that have the highest number of African learners in them. Beyond that, again, you're going to hear us speak at length about the importance of the Student Support Worker Program. Um, and and I hope by the end of this, one of the explicit messages that comes out of it is that that program um, helps African learners succeed in a system that is still struggling to meet them in an equitable way. But more importantly, that program helps a lot of kids who aren't student support or who aren't on their caseload as well, by virtue of explaining, modeling, and sharing Afrocentric ways of thinking and doing within the school system. So that being said, what I'd like to do at this point is to start a short little presentation. So um, there's the academic piece, which Jared and Brandy will speak a little bit to later on. But in terms of the funding that we get and how we make it, how we utilize it to make it meaningful for promoting self-identification, and to hold true and to activate the pillar of knowing them as they are known, is by providing as much cultural support as we can, as decided by community, the students, and the student support worker primarily. So it's us being responsive to the voice of those we serve. So if you'll excuse me just for 1 second, I'm going to try and bring up a screen. Okay. So I'm kind of operating without seeing what you're seeing right now. So are you seeing the front page that reads TCRCE African Nova Scotian Youth Cultural
Yes, we
Opportunity?
can see that, Joe.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Marlene.
Yep.
Um, so in terms of the racial equity budget, um, we're always being responsive to the needs of the schools as asked for by student support workers, by principals, and or families. One of the things that we inaugurated 2 years ago were cultural awareness youth groups in all of our high schools and middle schools. The student support workers agreed at that time that they would spearhead these groups, with an understanding that they were open to all students in the school, but that the main mandate of the groups was to celebrate Afrocentric ways of thinking and doing, and to be a place of exploration and in terms of African Nova Scotian history, and or a safe place for all youth to discuss issues um, um, that are important to them in terms of youth culture, but specifically too around the lived experience of being Black in a predominantly white education system. One of the asks that we had was to bring youth together. So what we've attempted to do over the last several years, and that COVID has sort of put a curtail on for the moment, is bringing students from 3 counties together to come to know one another and to share lived experiences with one another in terms of being Black in the public education system. These gatherings, because they're hinged on cultural awareness youth groups, are also open to any youth in the school. So there's plenty of non-African descent allies and friends who come to these as well. So this is just a snapshot of some of the activities that we've worked together, responding to youth voice. So a couple of years ago, specifically in the Digby area, the youth of the CAYG there, under the leadership of their student support worker, came to a groundbreaking ceremony for the AfricanCentric Community Center in Acaciaville. This was really important for the kids, because this is going to be their center and their children's center for community connection and for community involvement. So we had dignitaries from regional, provincial, and federal venues that were there. But it was a day of celebration, and it was also a day of unity among those youth. And them being able to be front and foremost during this groundbreaking, the response that we got was, yeah, this is for us, but this is also to make up for what our parents and previous generations didn't have and should have had. So that was certainly the vibe that came from the youth voice on that day. So the upper left hand, oops, let me see if I can go back. The upper left-hand photo are our youth from the school with their student support worker, Ginger Miller LeBlanc. Bottom is the mock-up that was unveiled of what the community center will look like. And to the right is are the dignitaries with Mr. Brad Barton in the foreground, Minister Tony Ince, Brenda Francis from the Black Educators Association, and other dignitaries speaking to the crowd, but speaking most importantly to the youth that were present there. So again, highlighting this is because we wouldn't have been able to do this without the funds that the provincial government, that the EECD had afforded us through the Student Support Worker Program, and as well as tapping into the Racial Equity Grant. We have two commitments every year to our Student Support Worker Program and the Cultural Awareness Youth Groups. Typically, every January, we've started a regional Kwanzaa gathering. We typically have had it at the Greenville Community Center in Greenville, Nova Scotia, which is an identified Black community local to Yarmouth. And so the day is structured in such a way as to connect. It has a strong intergenerational component to it. So we invited elders from Digby, Yarmouth, and Shelburne County, from the respective Black communities there, to come and speak to the youth, to share their experiences of what it was like for them growing up in community, and also their experiences of what it was like going to public school at that particular time. So the day starts typically with an activity called On Your Feet and Meet and Greet. And what that activity entails is the youth from 3 counties have to connect with youth from 2 counties that they're not from, as well as one elder in the room. They have to introduce themselves, share something of interest about who they are and where they come from. And it's a way of building relationship at the head of the day, so that the youth are networked right out of the gate. And all of us are, everybody that's present gets a chance to introduce and be together on a first name basis. These pictures are from the last year in 2020. The other activity during that day was a mock Black Baptist church service at the Greenville Baptist Church. Reverend Michael Fells and his wife Donna led that part. They gave a conversation around the history of the Black Baptist movement, around the church itself, and around community. Reverend Fells went through what a typical service would look like, and the traditions of call and response. So there was no proselytizing per se, but in terms of cultural education, understanding the importance of the church within community as the center of most communities, but specifically in this context, Black communities. So the sermon part was very much on the importance of education, believing in yourself, and one thing that was a big aha moment for a lot of students. Reverend Fells spoke in terms of what did they teach you and what did you learn, making a very poignant example that what you're taught isn't necessarily what you learn. So for instance, I'm taught that everyone is to be treated equally. what I learned is that that doesn't happen on a daily basis. You know, so those messages that are relevant to Black youth. The second part of the day, we have a shared meal with elders present. The second part of the day before the meal is an actual Kwanzaa education session. So all of the students, all the schools were asked to speak to one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba, and to be able to come and present to the other students on what that principle stands for and what it means to them. And then one by one, students from respective schools took turn lighting the Kinara, which is the candelabra used to celebrate Kwanzaa. I'm sure most are aware. After that, we have the sharing of a meal. The afternoon session starts with elder talk. So if you notice on the lower left-hand corner, there's Mr. Brad Barton with a mic. To his right, to his left rather, seated is Brenda Francis from the Black Educators Association. Mr. Don Barry from Yarmouth High School, principal from Yarmouth High School, also shared his experiences as a youth in the education system. And it was a time for question and answer. The afternoon is rounded out. Mr. Kenny Fowles came and joined us and did lessons on African hand drumming. So the main photo that you're seeing is the final afternoon session. This costs a lot of money to do. But that being said, again, pointing back to the racial equity budgets that we previously had access to, that's the seed money that makes this possible, because we have a start point to draw from. And then the regional center typically subsidizes to a large part as well. The student support worker program, if it didn't exist, this wouldn't be happening. Those individuals, those professionals are the keystone to youth engagement on this front. The theme last year was Umoja, which is unity. And so every year we try and switch to focus on a different principle of the Nguzo Saba. And feel free to stop, ask questions. I don't mean to take too much longer. I know there's 2 other people. This is the Greenville Baptist Church. This is the inside of the church and the students participating in that part. I want to apologize. We had a video link embedded in here that seems to have disappeared. But we can certainly share that after the presentation. And what it was a short clip of Reverend Fell speaking, but also leading the students in song. And that education session was a beautiful way to start the day. It was powerful. It was spirited, and everyone left that church fully engaged and joyful. So we're thankful that we had the opportunity to do that, and to the community of Greenville who allowed us access to their church. Oh, hang on now. I think I just found the video clip. Oops. Yeah, no. Okay, it's not linked. The second regional gathering, again, these are youth that are from the 3 counties, is usually held at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center in Birchtown, Nova Scotia. Every year, the center is very good at changing the program for the day in terms of what education pieces are provided. But just as importantly, these gatherings really for everyone involved, but specifically for the youth, it's almost like coming up for air, reconnecting with Black youth from other communities, from allies and friends from other communities, and checking in with one another. So a part of this is simply getting a tour of the grounds every year, visiting the Anglican Church on site. But one of the things that I've noticed in the last couple of years is in the Heritage Center, there's listings of Indigenous Black Nova Scotia names. And it always it always warms my heart to see kids gravitate to their family names and want to know more. And for many students who may not have a fullness of understanding of their own history, this center provides a very good springboard into conversations and exploration as to the historical narrative of Black Loyalists, especially for those students who can trace their lineage through that narrative. Again, using funding provided by EECD to support this. This is youth from Yarmouth Elementary School and from Yarmouth High School, who are facilitating the opening of the first ever Town of Yarmouth African Heritage Month. And this was in 2020. So students raised the Pan-African flag in front of Town Hall, which you can see on the left, and then gathered for an opening with dignitaries and led and emceed the event for the most part. So this is a community engagement piece. It has intersectionality of intergenerational connection, but again, it's always meant as an invitation for others to join and to celebrate and understand the importance of valuing Afrocentric ways of thinking and doing, Black Nova Scotian narratives and history, and recognizing barriers that are still very much at play in terms of full social inclusion, academic success, all of those pieces, and making the voice of youth central in an education context to have those conversations so that we're able to be responsive to nurture and to strengthen the voice and determination of youth. This will be the final slide that I'll speak to. We started a tradition, and certainly Martin Morrison would have been the person that brought this to our area initially, with partnership of the Black Educators Association. Every student of African descent that wished to be recognized for their academic achievement and cultural pride were invested with a graduation stole. Many youth very much look forward to receiving this as a rite of passage, so to speak. One of the things that we've done to expand this is to make them available to any staff member in TCRCE who is of African descent, who wishes to present as an ally. And the beauty of this is that when students are given their stole, if they choose to accept one, because it isn't forced on anyone, they're able to see in the adult community their success and their accomplishment reflected in the adult population. So it brings them into that adult realm of community, and recognizes their academic success, yes, absolutely, but also sends them into their post-secondary endeavors, whatever they may be, with a reinforcement that they should be proud of their Black heritage, of their African Nova Scotian identity, regardless of when their identity began, or their family existence began in Nova Scotia, whether they're African individual who's recently come in the last 10 years, or if it is somebody who has been here lineage-wise for 400 years. So again, this was a piece that we had done using the funds provided by EECD, and also being subsidized by the regional budget here. So this is just some examples of how the money's spent, and the impact on it is meant to embolden, it's meant to strengthen, and it's meant to, and I want to be hesitant when I say this, but I also want to say it like I'm thinking it, plant a seed of radicalization in a meaningful way that helps African youth, Black youth in our area, trust their own gut and to act on their own agency and determination in seeking what is going to make them happy in life and what is going to make them feel successful in life on their own terms. So I hope that little window into some of these activities has been helpful. Certainly, if there's any questions, feel free to ask them at this point. If there are none, then we're going to transition over to Brandy.
Thanks, Joe. Can you do the next slide, Joe? I don't think I have access to. So the next slide's going to speak to a recent initiative that once again was put on by the Student Support Worker Program and supported by Digby Regional High's principal or school. And so what you see here is a fashion show that took place probably a week or two ago. And was all the students in which participated was the caseload students of the Student Support Worker Program. Next slide, Joe, please. So the students on this particular day modeled clothing for 3 separate cohorts of students. Thank you, Joe. So that just captures some. There were many more, and I think later on you'll see the group of students in its entirety of who participated in the particular fashion show. So prior to getting into these slides, we had event that was to celebrate African Heritage Month. So all self-identified Black students were invited to participate in a live stream moderated panel discussion on how to start a business. And topics included, how to secure funding, how to build your network, dealing with challenges, along with branding and marketing. So in addition to the fashion show, we thought that it would be nice to bring in a local Black entrepreneur. So in this video, or in this slide here, you'll notice the lady on the right-hand side. Her name is Barbara Roberts. She is also an active SAC member, and she works at NSCC, but during COVID, she decided to begin her new business of Afronova Jewelry and Accessories. And she came about this idea because she wanted something authentic. She wanted a face mask, and she couldn't find any relating to her culture. So she decided to make her own. So within that, she built this business. So after, I think this event happened a week after partaking into that particular online event. Sorry, was there a question? Oh.
I don't think so, Brandy. I didn't see
okay, no, maybe it was outside, sorry. So you can go to the next slide, Joe, please. During her visit, I thought there was another slide before that. Did we skip one? Okay. During her visit, she spoke about her business, of course, and she kind of explained how it developed, and students were given the opportunity to kind of ask about her products, come up and observe her products and purchase any if they wished. Some I placed orders. She did have some sales that particular day, but she also spoke about some of the clothing, which was very nice because you can see all our participants there on the stage. Her business kind of spoke to the clothing in which the students had modeled earlier on that morning. So in addition, on the same day, we had an elder, Bonita, I believe her name is, Miller, come in, and Gingers, the student support workers, caseload students, were able to participate in making traditional cornbread. Next slide, please, Joe. So the next slide just speaks to students engaging in, mixing it up and measuring and then, putting it in the oven. And I think the next slide is the finished result. Yeah. So they were all excited. At first, they were a little bit nervous because they're like, are we just making one? But when they noticed that they were making their own individual to take home, they were very happy with their finished product. And this was an opportunity that they hadn't taken part in the past. So this was nice. So I just want to say a number of opportunities, happen within our region, and I'm just going to mention some of them in terms of presenters for African descent, and of course this isn't limited to. So I know at Digby High there were virtual viewings from Maritime Dance, live stream of the Mando Drummers from Toronto. Mr. Fells also offered opportunity for daily quiz questions for the African Heritage Month. He had drumming presentations which took place in class. He also offers drumming presentations after drumming opportunity, so drumming group per se, after school on Wednesdays. In some of the other areas, as Joe had made mention earlier, there was the rising of the Pan-African flag, which students from in Yarmouth attended that as well. And I believe there was 4 students that contributed in the grade 4 and 5 level who read poems. And they also received gold stamp certificates signed by the mayor and the deputy mayor. In some of the schools, there were contests for drawing pictures of Viola Desmond, and they were awarded a gift. I think that was for primary to 1 students, along with coloring contest. And all self-identified students within our region received or were given a T-shirt that was designed specifically to honor and promote African Heritage Month. And the feedback from that were that they were very proud, in terms of receiving that, and happy. The Black National Anthem was played in several of our schools. I know in one particular school, it was played daily for the entire month. A member of the school also sang that the national anthem solo, and the students had an opportunity to win a prize if they guessed who the singer was. In the same school, they provided a closing ceremony for students and staff where there were drummers on stage. Monthly awards were given to both teachers and students were drummed out of the building while they received their Chocolate Friday gift. And that was on the very last day of February. So when we speak about all these things, in terms of wellness, you can surely see that the African Nova Scotian students felt valued and accepted. They had opportunity to witness their peers contributing, learning and participating in education about their history. This is something that they've been asking for, they've been wanting. And it's not only about American history, it's local history. It gave opportunity to bring people from the community into the school. During this time, they didn't feel isolated. And it wasn't only for African Nova Scotian students, it was for the school population. So they didn't, and that's one of the reasons they didn't feel isolated. And I can say out of the fashion show, like just having that and that one particular day, there was at least one student that I was aware of that self-identified. So this was a student that nobody knew, had African heritage, and she came forth and disclosed and actually wanted a registration form to register for our program. So within saying that, there's a number of other initiatives that's happening, within our region. I know some of the other things include there was overview of suspension of marginalized students in all our schools. We reviewed the attendance. We also looked at, I'm trying to think of the proper streaming of students for, non-academic or academic math. So, which led to, some further action, some plans moving forward in terms of how that's done or dealt with. And I wanted to say that, you know, in terms of staffing and recruitment, I believe Tri-County has been working extremely, you know, hard. I've gone through all my adult years of going through the public school system, and I did not have one teacher that looked like me. I did not have an opportunity to have a teacher teach me that was, you know, African, Nova Scotian, or Mi'kmaq, or any of that. Not one. Unfortunately, it took me to get to my master's to actually have that opportunity, and what a difference it made, because, you know, all of a sudden you feel they know what you've went through. And I can't even explain, you know, how that felt. The first year of me taking my master's was very difficult, because I had to admit to myself, or I was ashamed. I was ashamed because there was so many things that I didn't know. And so when I speak to some of the initiatives that's happening in a school, it makes me feel really, really good, because none of those things happened when I was in school. Not one. So I just wanted to kind of offer that, because when you do talk to students, this is what they're asking for. I mentioned earlier that that there is drumming that takes place on Wednesdays at one of our schools. So even just bringing students together gave opportunity to kind of speak to the students and find out, you know, how come you're not attending that? Well, you know, it's not because they don't want to. For the most of them, they're involved in sports. So there's extracurricular activities that's taken place during that time. So I haven't had a chance to speak to the principal, but I'm just wondering, maybe, you know, with those conversations and bringing people together, we might be able to change that. Maybe it can happen in school, you know, maybe it can happen at noon hour. I don't know. But, you know, without having the opportunity to meet with students, we just maybe assume that, you know, people weren't interested, when that's not the case. So I think I'll pass it over now to Jared. It's 10:02, so I don't want to take up too much time and provide opportunity for questions.
Thank you, Brandy. And thank you, Joe, as well. You know, in the sake of time, I'll go through my piece fairly quickly. You know, I'm very proud of the work that's happening in Tri-County, and, you know, singling out both Brandy and Joe, as well as Martin. Our equity team has done a lot of work, and it has been a year of growth for us. You know, parts of what they'd said for me really resonated, and I'm proud of the work that's happened on the ground level and digging into the individual students. Some of the work that described, it was nice, you know, from a regional leadership team's perspective. Oftentimes the work that you're doing doesn't hit down into the ground level, and I was proud of the work that was done, you know, in terms of looking at individual students. And for me, it was great, because some of them were the names of kids that went through my own school that were now in high school. But looking at the individual level, you know, a grade 3 provincial math score, a grade 6 provincial math score, a grade 8 provincial math score, and seeing how high and how at a high level they achieved, and then realizing in grade 10 they're taking non-academic math, and digging deep into the reasons why that was happening. So that created some next steps for us. You know, Brandy described looking at the suspensions of our marginalized students, looking at programming of our African Nova Scotian students over 4 days related to IPP with our student services work. So I'm very proud of that. I really like how Joe started with the tone around our student support workers. You know, from my time as a school administrator, those folks were integral to the school. They're oftentimes the unsung heroes of the school, to be quite honest. And I mentioned this being kind of a year of growth, and I feel like our leadership team has grown a lot this year. You know, for me personally, and I shared an experience with Joe where, you know, I became uncomfortable in my own journey, where I felt, you know, at one point that I had set a pretty high bar in terms of where I thought I was at in my own journey of equity, and in understanding, you know, the lived experiences of marginalized communities, and you know, coming from a position where acknowledging societal privileges and you know, power and things like that, it really hit hard when I invited a student support worker from whom I had worked with before. And her and I had a really hard conversation. It was emotional. It was hard. Because I walked away from that meeting knowing that the bar where I had set for myself, I wasn't quite there. But the way to best describe it is I feel myself and our team as well, we've become more comfortable in being, we've become more comfortable in being uncomfortable. I've never felt safer having hard conversations than I do this year. I've had them with Joe, I've had them with Brandy, I've had them with our student support workers, and I know others have too. And I think that speaks to the growth that we're experiencing in Tri-County. And I'm very proud of that work. So for me, again, going back down to the individual level, I took part in, we called it the Ancestral Roots Reboot. So Martin Morrison facilitated conversations at 4 of our high schools. And we listened to first voice experiences of our Black students. And the evidence and data pulled from that was alarming, to say the least. It created some very hard conversations. Some of the themes, that came out of it, and again, for me personally, it was hearing from students that I watched come into school in grade primary, and hearing that they're still facing some of the same issues that they faced way back then. It was tough to hear. Frequent use of the N-word, and just how freely racialized language was used. In Tri-County, Joe and Brandy and Martin really got out ahead of creating a document around addressing racialized language, but it was clear that our students still needed help. So we heard a lot about a lack of staff willingness and or ability to address issues of race, oftentimes turning the cheek or not diving in deep, and our students feeling the word exhausted was used around, they're tired of policing this themselves. A lot about the curriculum and a need to infuse African heritage into the content areas. We heard a lot about, hearing every February about slavery and American history, and a need to infuse more local resources into the content areas. And just that overall theme of an imbalance of power. So from that, we have an Ancestral Roots committee that we're meeting again next week. We're looking at things of what we can do to help out and get involved with our students. So everything from creating student focus groups, sharing of local information and resources, some of that curricular transfer that I mentioned earlier. We've learned a lot, in listening to, I believe I saw Crescenda's name earlier. We listened to the experiences of the Annapolis Valley region with their Afrocentric cohort. We've heard a lot from our Auburn High around the benefits of the Afrocentric cohort. So that is a commitment Tri-County has made. We're doing some scheduling actually right now where we're learning from the experiences of others that have done it, again, in the Valley and HRCE. I spoke a lot to Lynn and Cape Breton around some ideas. So we're committing to putting together an Afrocentric cohort next year at Yarmouth High, and looking to expand that into other schools as an immediate first step. We're excited about some of the work that we can do with our students. So I mentioned student focus groups earlier. Those are the voices that resonate the most with us. So I'm really looking forward to what we can achieve in the coming months and gathering steam heading into next year. So again, I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. Joe and Brandy mentioned, a number of things that we've done. We're also doing some work around elevating some of the things that are in our system improvement plan. So initially we were looking at creating, kind of a non-negotiables document. We've shifted the language around a little bit to instructional expectations. And the very first one on the page is around cultural responsiveness. So looking and engaging in anti-racism work, anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, anti-discrimination work. We had done some work at the start of the year around an anti-Black webinar that really resonated with a lot of folks. And again, from a personal standpoint, it allowed me to unpack things that I had never unpacked before. Again, you go through your time as a teacher and as a principal, and there were many times where I felt I was right where I needed to be. But again, unless you really listen and learn, and especially for someone who doesn't have the lived experiences, the key is listening and understanding how to be a better ally in this work. And the webinar and the anti-Black racism work that we've done here listening to Mr. Fells deliver some content through the ELCNS. I'm looking forward to the module work that are ahead that he's put together. It's been a year of growth is how I would describe it in Tri-County. And there's lots of growth left to be undertaken. So again, I appreciate the time to speak today. I want to acknowledge again Brandy and Joe and Martin for the great work that they've done. They've really led this growth for us. And again, really looking forward to continuing on the journey.
I don't want to miss the opportunity, Marlene, just to share one more thought, because everything that we've spoken of, if we view this as a plane in the sky flying, we've leaned heavily on one wing. We've got the cultural and the responsiveness to community and to students, listening to those voices. We do that consistently and well, I feel. Where we need to put or deepen our effort and figure out how to do it in an effective way is the systemic piece, working with the professionals in the system who are, by and large, excellent teachers who think they are doing the best that they can for African Nova Scotian learners and who think that they have their biases in check when in fact they do not. That piece, and I would point to Mr. Fells, to Kenny Fells' work with the anti-racism, anti-discrimination modules. That module program, when it comes out, my hope is that this helps to awaken a lot of people who, on the one hand, just need that one more nudge to open up and reflect on who they are, where they come from, and how their thoughts and actions and implicit biases impact all the learners in their classroom, but also to send another direct message to those who are obtuse, of whom there are those in our system, that they need to act in ways of change. They need to unpack in a much more poignant and meaningful way how they engage in pedagogical approaches, so that they are, and so using CRP as an example, so that we have more mobilization at the classroom level of people who understand that systemic change takes everyone's involvement. And I hope I've been able to express my thought at least a little clearer than what I think I'm saying. But that's the other part of this. And really, it's the accountability piece. How do we hold public educators accountable to making sure that they are working in ways that are effective and that promote change for equity and equality?
Good morning, everybody. No, I don't have a question. I was just telling Tri-County, job well done. Just in regards to interacting with the community. No, you folks, and also being first. More kudos to you. Well done. And that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Crescendo.
I look forward to your AfricanCentric cohort too. We're doing some framework work around them so that we can maybe avoid some pitfalls as have been brought up here. There does need to be a bit of cultural understanding as we partake down this road.
Cheers
to you guys. You guys did a great job.
We plan to reach out.
All right, bye-bye.